David needed a fresh start. His life in Chicago had unraveled, leaving him with nothing but regrets and a yearning for a change of scenery. He found a charming, affordable apartment in a quiet neighborhood in New Orleans. It seemed like the perfect place to start over. The building was old, with a certain antique charm that appealed to David. He envisioned himself writing in the evenings, the sounds of the city as a calming soundtrack. The apartment was relatively small, a studio with a kitchenette and a separate bathroom. The exposed brick walls and hardwood floors gave it a cozy, rustic feel. David immediately felt at ease. He spent the first few days unpacking, meticulously placing his few belongings around the apartment, trying to make it feel like home. Everything felt perfect, a blank canvas for his new life. One evening, while arranging books on a small shelf, David noticed something peculiar. The room was dimly lit, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. He had always found solace in the quiet of his new apartment, a place where he could escape the chaos of the outside world. But tonight, something felt different. There was an unsettling stillness in the air, a silence that seemed to whisper secrets. In the wall opposite his bed, partially hidden behind a faded tapestry, was a door. It was strange because he had meticulously examined every corner of his new home when he moved in, and he was certain he had never seen this door before. The tapestry, with its intricate designs and worn fabric, had always seemed like just another piece of decor. He hadn't noticed it before, and it wasn't on the floor plan the landlord had shown him. The floor plan had been straightforward, with no mention of any hidden doors or secret compartments. David's curiosity was now fully awakened, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this door was hiding something significant. Curiosity piqued. David moved the tapestry, revealing a solid oak door with no handle or hinges. The wood was dark and polished, almost as if it had been recently maintained, yet it bore no signs of use. It was an enigma, standing there silently, challenging him to uncover its secrets. It was as if it had been sealed shut, seamlessly blending with the wall. The craftsmanship was impeccable, making it almost invisible to the untrained eye. David wondered how many previous tenants had lived here without ever noticing it. David ran his fingers over the smooth wood, a shiver crawling down his spine. The texture was cold and unyielding, sending a chill through his body. It was as if the door was alive, pulsating with a hidden energy that resonated with his touch. Why was there a door here, and why was it concealed? Questions swirled in his mind, each one more perplexing than the last. Was it a relic from a bygone era, or had it been deliberately hidden for a reason? The possibilities were endless, and each one more intriguing than the last. A knot of unease tightened in his stomach. The room, which had once been his sanctuary, now felt like a stranger's domain. The presence of the door had changed everything, casting a shadow over his sense of security. His new haven was starting to feel a little less welcoming. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the air grew thick with tension. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the door was somehow aware of his presence. He resolved to ask the landlord about it the next day. Perhaps there was a simple explanation, something that would put his mind at ease. But deep down, he knew that the door was more than just an architectural anomaly. Maybe it was just an old closet sealed off for some forgotten reason. Buildings often had their quirks, remnants of past renovations or forgotten plans. But this door felt different, as if it was guarding something important, something that had been deliberately hidden away. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. The door was a mystery, and mysteries had a way of unraveling the fabric of reality. David couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond it, and whether he was ready to find out. The next morning, David went to see the building manager, Mrs. Dupree, a wizened woman with a perpetually worried expression. Her face was etched with lines that spoke of years of dealing with tenants' complaints and the building's endless quirks. David had always found her to be a bit aloof, but today, he needed answers. He found her in the dimly lit lobby, sorting through a mountain of mail. The lobby itself was a relic of the past, with its faded wallpaper and creaky wooden floors. The dim lighting added to the eerie atmosphere, making the shadows seem to dance on the walls. "Mrs. Dupree," David began, "I have a question about my apartment. There seems to be a door in the living room that wasn't on the floor plan." He tried to keep his voice steady, but the uncertainty in his tone was evident. Mrs. Dupree peered at him over her spectacles. "A door, you say? Are you sure?" Her voice was laced with skepticism, as if she had heard countless bizarre claims before. Yes, I'm positive, David insisted. It's on the wall opposite the bed, covered by a tapestry. He could feel his frustration mounting. How could she not know about something so obvious? Mrs. Dupree frowned. That's impossible. There's no door there. The floor plan is accurate. Her tone was final, leaving no room for argument. David's unease returned. But I saw it with my own eyes. It's definitely there. He felt a chill run down his spine. Was he losing his mind? Look, young man, Mrs. Dupree said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. This building is old and it settles. You probably just saw a shadow or something. There's no need to worry yourself. Her words were dismissive, almost condescending. David tried to reason with her, but Mrs. Dupree refused to acknowledge the door's existence. She insisted he was mistaken and dismissed him with a curt wave. It was as if she had already made up her mind and nothing he said could change it. David left the office feeling unsettled and confused. He couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Dupree was hiding something. The way she had so quickly dismissed his concerns only added to his suspicions. Back in his apartment, David stood before the concealed door. He reached out and pressed his hand against the cool wood. It felt solid, real. He wasn't mistaken. The door was there, just as he had seen it before. But why would Mrs. Dupree lie about it? What was she trying to hide? David's mind raced with possibilities. Was there something sinister behind the door, or was it simply a forgotten part of the building's history? He knew he had to find out, but the thought of what he might discover filled him with dread. David paced back and forth in his living room, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He couldn't let this go. The door was real, and Mrs. Dupree's reaction only made him more determined to uncover the truth. He decided to do some research on the building's history, hoping to find any clues that might explain the mysterious door. He spent hours poring over old documents and blueprints, but there was no mention of a hidden door. Frustration gnawed at him, but he refused to give up. There had to be an explanation, and he was determined to find it. As the days passed, David's determination only grew stronger. He knew he was on the verge of discovering something important, something that Mrs. Dupree didn't want him to find. The mystery of the hidden door consumed his thoughts, and he vowed to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. One night, as David lay in bed trying to ignore the oppressive silence of the apartment, he heard a noise. It was a night like any other, or so he thought. The moonlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The silence was almost tangible, pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. He tried to focus on the rhythmic ticking of the clock, hoping it would lull him to sleep. But then, he heard it. It was a faint scratching sound coming from the direction of the hidden door. He froze, listening intently. His mind raced, trying to rationalize the noise. Perhaps it was just the wind, or maybe a branch scraping against the window. But deep down, he knew it was something else, something far more sinister. The scratching continued, soft but persistent, like tiny claws scraping against the wood. Each scratch seemed to echo in the stillness of the night, growing louder and more insistent. It was as if whatever was behind that door was desperate to get out, to reach him. David's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the blood rushing in his ears, drowning out all other sounds. His breathing became shallow and rapid, each breath a struggle against the rising tide of panic. He sat up in bed, his eyes fixed on the tapestry-covered door. The tapestry, once a comforting piece of decor, now seemed to mock him, hiding whatever horrors lay behind it. He wanted to get up, to rip it down and confront whatever was there, but he couldn't bring himself to move. The scratching grew louder, accompanied by a low, guttural whispering. The whispers were barely audible, like the murmurs of a distant conversation, but there was something malevolent in their tone, something that made his skin crawl. It was too low for David to make out any words, but the sound sent chills down his spine. He strained to hear, hoping to catch a fragment of what was being said, but the whispers remained just out of reach, teasing him with their sinister secrets. He wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but lie there, paralyzed by fear. His mind screamed at him to move, to do something, but his body refused to obey. He was trapped, a prisoner of his own terror, but he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was as if an invisible force was holding him down, pressing him into the mattress. He could feel the weight of it, cold and oppressive, suffocating him. He lay there, trapped in the grip of terror, as the scratching and whispering continued for what felt like an eternity. Time seemed to stretch, each second an agonizing eternity. He could feel the darkness closing in around him, suffocating him. Then as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the cacophony that had filled the room moments before. He lay there, his body trembling, waiting for the next sound, the next sign of whatever had been tormenting him. The only sound was the pounding of David's heart. It echoed in the silence, a reminder that he was still alive, still here. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, but the fear lingered, a dark shadow in the back of his mind. He lay there for hours, unable to shake the feeling that something evil was lurking just beyond the mysterious door. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains made him jump. He couldn't escape the feeling that he was being watched, that something was waiting for him. Sleep evaded him, replaced by a bone-chilling dread that seeped into his very core. He knew that whatever had been behind that door wasn't gone. It was still there, waiting, watching. And he knew that it was only a matter of time before it came for him again.